What if the strength of a marriage is not measured by how it begins, but by how it is protected over time? What if the greatest threat to love is not conflict itself, but the slow erosion of commitment? And what if the teachings of Jesus on marriage were never meant to restrict love, but to restore its original depth and sacredness? In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verses 1 to 12, Jesus is approached by the Pharisees with a question designed to test him. They ask, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" But behind the question is not a search for truth. It is a debate about permission, a discussion about limits, a way to justify separation. Jesus responds not by entering their argument, but by redirecting them to something deeper. "What did Moses command you?" he asks. They reply, "Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce and send her away." Then Jesus says something crucial. "It was because your hearts were hard that Moses wrote you this law." This is the key to understanding everything that follows. Jesus is not celebrating divorce, but he is also not treating people as if they live in a perfect world. He acknowledges reality. Human hearts can become hardened. And because of that hardness, laws were given to manage brokenness, not to celebrate it. But then Jesus takes them further back, before laws, before traditions, before debates. He made them male and female, Jesus says, quoting Genesis. "For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." And then he adds something that changes everything. "So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate." This is not just a statement about marriage. It is a statement about sacred union. Jesus is pointing to the original design, not the broken interpretation. He is reminding them that marriage is not merely a social contract. It is a spiritual joining, a mystery deeper than convenience, deeper than emotion, deeper than temporary difficulty. But to understand this teaching properly, we need to see what Jesus is really addressing. He is not ignoring human pain. He is not blind to suffering in relationships. He is not pretending that all marriages are easy or safe or healthy. Instead, he is confronting something deeper than divorce itself, the condition of the heart. Because behind every broken relationship, there is usually something invisible long before separation happens. Distance that grows slowly, words that wound and are never repaired, pride that refuses to soften, forgiveness that is delayed too long, communication that fades into silence. And over time, what was once unity becomes two separate paths. Jesus names this condition directly, hardness of heart. This is not about intelligence. It is not about education. It is not about social status. It is about a heart that stops softening, stops listening, stops choosing love. And when the heart becomes hard, even good relationships begin to crack. So Jesus is not simply addressing divorce as an event. He is addressing what leads to it. But his message does not end with warning. It extends into restoration. Because if hardness of heart is the root problem, then the solution is a softened heart, a renewed heart, a heart capable of humility, patience, and forgiveness. In many ways, this passage is not just about marriage laws. It is about the spiritual posture needed to sustain any deep relationship. Marriage becomes the clearest example because it is the closest human bond. Two lives becoming one, sharing daily life, facing conflict, growing together, learning forgiveness again and again. And this is why Jesus elevates marriage rather than diminishes it. He is showing its weight, its sacred responsibility, its spiritual depth, but he is also protecting it from being treated casually. In a world where relationships can easily become temporary, replaceable, or conditional, Jesus restores the idea that love carries covenant weight, something that is meant to be guarded, not discarded quickly. But there is another important layer in this teaching. When Jesus says, "Let no one separate," he is not only speaking about external forces, he is also speaking about internal ones. Because often, separation begins long before physical separation happens. It begins in the heart, in attitudes that slowly distance people emotionally, in resentment that is not addressed, in assumptions that are never corrected, in silence that replaces honest communication. So this teaching becomes an invitation to self-reflection, not judgment of others, but examination of ourselves. How do we handle tension in relationships? Do we lean toward repair or withdrawal? Do we choose understanding or assumption? Do we pursue reconciliation or quiet separation in the heart long before any official ending. Jesus' words challenge this pattern. They call us back to intentional love, not love based only on emotion, but love grounded in commitment. And commitment in this context is not blind endurance of harm. It is the decision to protect what is sacred, to work through difficulty, and to honor the covenant of unity. But there is also wisdom in recognizing that healing requires humility from both sides. A hardened heart can exist in anyone, and softening it is not instant. It requires reflection, it requires grace. It requires the willingness to say, maybe I need to change too. This is why Jesus' teaching is so powerful. It does not simply divide people into right and wrong. It exposes the deeper condition that affects everyone, and it invites transformation from the inside out. When the disciples later ask Jesus more questions privately, he continues to emphasize the seriousness of separating what God has joined. But even in this seriousness, the underlying message is not condemnation. It is preservation. Preserve what is valuable. Protect what is sacred. Do not treat deep union lightly, because what is joined in love is not just emotional, it is spiritual. And when something spiritual is treated carelessly, the consequences reach deeper than surface-level outcomes. This is why Jesus speaks so firmly, not to restrict joy, but to protect it. Not to limit love, but to preserve its depth. Because true love is not fragile in itself, but it can be weakened by neglect. It can be damaged by pride. It can be eroded by lack of care. And once broken, healing is possible, but it is often painful and slow. So prevention matters, awareness matters, intentionality matters. And at the center of all of it is the heart. A heart that chooses daily to remain soft. A heart that chooses forgiveness over bitterness. A heart that chooses communication over silence. A heart that chooses humility over pride. This is the foundation Jesus is pointing to, not just rules about separation, but wisdom about preservation. Not just boundaries, but depth. Not just law, but love that endures. And when we step back and reflect, this teaching applies far beyond marriage alone. It speaks to friendships, families, communities, any relationship where unity matters, because every meaningful bond will eventually face tension. And in those moments, the direction we choose matters, toward healing or toward separation, toward understanding or withdrawal, toward restoration or distance. Jesus is inviting us to choose carefully, to value what is joined, to protect what is sacred, to recognize that love is not only found, it is maintained, and that maintenance requires heart work, inner work, spiritual awareness. So as we reflect on this passage, we are not simply reading ancient words about divorce laws. We are being invited into a deeper understanding of love itself, love that is not disposable, love that is not shallow, love that is not easily abandoned, but love that is rooted in commitment, humility, and grace. And perhaps the most important question this passage leaves us with is not about others, but about ourselves. Is my heart soft enough to preserve what matters? Am I willing to grow where I have become hardened? Am I choosing actions today that build unity or slowly create distance? Because in the end, relationships are shaped not in a single moment, but in thousands of small decisions. And each decision either strengthens the bond or weakens it. Jesus points us toward awareness, toward responsibility, toward love that endures, and toward hearts that remain open, even when life becomes difficult. Thank you for watching this video. If this message spoke to you, please take a moment to like, follow the channel, and share this video with someone who may need encouragement in their relationships today.